Okay, I want to share the screen because we were talking before about. Let's see. Is it? Let me see. Yeah, here it is. This is this. I want to show you the stat. This I'm just sharing the screen on my.
I always
This
get
is
nervous when I do that. I don't want to show the wrong thing.
what?
Exactly.
I have
Why
no
does Larry have
idea.
OnlyFans up? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
What's
makes me
that
want to share that.
about? um. Anyway, this is a stat that I saw earlier today, and that is we're talking about Robert Saleh's defenses. Look at the blitz rate on Robert Saleh since he's been in the NFL. 4 years with the Niners. It ranked 21st, 21st, 28th, 13th in 2020. That was the year they lost Bosa, so they had to blitz more. So they blitzed at 35.4%. But then he goes to the Jets, 29%. They're 20th in blitz rate, 31st in 2022. Dead last they blitzed the least of any team in pro football in 2023, and this year 22nd, and they lost, of course, Reddick, right? He wasn't, you know, they traded for him. It didn't work out, and then he didn't show up.
Okay, but you know what that tells you right there? You know what that tells you?
You got to get it done with your front four.
Well, that's it. And so
he expects
if Saleh,
he likes to get it done with his front four.
So if we're having our conversation about Myles Garrett and you look at that number, and he hasn't been with the 49ers since 2020, but that's the year they lost Bosa. So really, he hasn't had the full complement being here because we all go, oh, he knows the defense so well. Well, he hasn't had the full defense since 2019 when Fred and Bosa and everything were young.
They went to the Super Bowl.
Right. So they went to the Super Bowl that year, and they had the full complement of their defensive line. Well, this year, you look across, and he doesn't, he has Bosa, but he didn't have like a Quinnen Williams. They were stacked on that D-line. He either has to go get Myles Garrett or convince him to go get Myles Garrett, or he's going to have to change some things up defensively because if they don't, Leonard Floyd's nice, but I think at this point in his career, he's a third down guy. And I think they need an every down guy opposite Bosa. And we've talked about ad nauseum the interior of the defensive line. If if Saleh, we have free agency, we have the draft, so they're going to address it, but they better, because if Saleh thinks, and this was one of the main problems for Nick Sorensen, not only did Nick Sorensen not bring the blitz, but when Bosa got hurt, like you just talked about 2020, when it goes up to 35.4%, he didn't adjust. That's why he's gone. I mean, they were bad in general, but it was like, hey, dude, Bosa's not even in the game, and you're still bringing four. Like, I know that philosophically that's not what you want to do, but you got to put some pressure. You got to heat the quarterback up, and they didn't change anything. And when I look at this number, if Saleh thinks with the current group of defensive linemen that he's not going to have to bring extra pressure, he is.
Well, but I mean, if you really look at this too, I mean, his blitz rates percentage-wise with New York were way lower than he ever had in San Francisco. 17%. I mean, those 22 and 23, they were the lowest blitzing team in pro football. And guess what? That's what he wants. So what's the key to that? The key to that is to have a front four that wrecks shop. And that means you got to have Quinnen Williams. You got to have Nick Bosa. You got to have special players up front. And you got to, and then, sometimes you can only use the second pick in the draft on Quinnen Williams so many times, or Nick Bosa so many times. Other than that, you got to find Jamie and Sherwood. Yeah. You got to find guys who play their ass off, and guys who play really, really hard, and guys who have tons of talent. Bryce Huff, and these guys that nobody else seems to be able to find. And I would say this: it's like the 49ers, when you see these numbers, I mean, they have to get their defensive line back up to snuff, because their whole thing is predicated on their whole defense is predicated on a big time defensive line. They don't have a single defensive back who runs sub 4.4. They don't have speed in their secondary. It's all about what they can get done up front. And if they can't get anything done up front, their secondary really can't stand up. So it's really vitally important that whether it's TJ Watt, whether it's Myles Garrett, or whether it's somebody at 11 or trading back and you have 5 picks in the third round, they have to get their defensive line cooking like ASAP. It's probably the biggest question mark on that side of the ball.
I don't think there's any question. And given those numbers, it's not going to change. And look, I'm pro Robert Saleh, and I'm fine with it. But like you said, he is a dyed in the wool. We're coming with 4, and I want to play 7 behind, which I completely understand that. And you bring up a great point in the secondary, is that I like Demo and I have no problem with that contract. I watched a little bit of Renardo after the season ended, and you become more and more impressed the more you watch Renardo Green. He's going to be good. And Mustafa's going to take the place of Fafunga. They're not going to be able to afford him. They need a third corner, of course, given what the league is right now. They need to figure it out. Maybe it's a veteran. Maybe it's DJ Reed, our old pal, coming over from the Jets because Saleh knows him. And that would be a hell of a tandem of corners. Those three corners would be great. Jared Brown scares the hell out of me. So if you're going 4 and you're not getting to the quarterback, Jared Brown is not only slow, that's why he was drafted where he was drafted, but he took a step back last year. There's no question. He got beat a lot, and he's going to get exposed in the middle of that defense. So I like what they can do. I'd love them to get a Garrett. They got in, the interior of the defensive line has got to get better, and I like Sherwood, the kid from the Jets, to go next to Warner. I like Dre Greenlaw, but that scares me, that Achilles. But that secondary, if they don't get to the quarterback and they don't pick up a decent third corner, they're going to target the third corner. They're going to target Jared Brown. I like Green. He's probably going to make mistakes. Ward's clearly not coming back. His wife's got PTSD, so he's not coming back. They're going to be good defensively. I do think Saleh's going to solve it. But you and I have talked about this before. He's not a magician. And I've never seen a coach be really good with really bad players. And in the NFL, it only takes
wanted
one.
Robert Saleh out until 2019 when he got Nick Bosa and
17 and 18
Ford and
Yeah. You get exposed in the NFL even if you have one bad player. I mean, Devondre Campbell got used again and again and again, and then it went to Jared Brown, who struggled at times in giving up big plays. You could have it is the epitome of your weakest link, because if you have 10 really strong players but one that the offense can target, they're going to get you. And the way to do that is to get after the quarterback. So I'm sure Saleh is pounding the table for Myles Garrett, and I'm sure he's pounding the table for a lot of those guys that you talked about in the draft, so that they can get better on the interior of the defensive line.
Okay, they get to 11. Let's just say, let's just move Garrett off. We'll move off the Garrett conversation for a minute and go on to a different thing. Let's say the Garrett deal either can get done without 11 or they can't land him. What do you want to do at 11? What's your game plan right now at 11? And I bring this up because I've heard people speculate that the Niners, and I don't know where they're getting it from, because I feel like I'm as plugged in as anybody, but nobody's telling me any of these things. But who knows? That the Niners are going defensive tackle, or that they're going to go with somebody who touches the football, a runner, a tight end, a receiver. I can't imagine they would go quarterback, obviously, but a skill position guy or a defensive tackle at 11. That's what I've seen written, and I think it's really interesting because there really are potentially 3 really interesting skill position guys that could be staring them in the face, that are all super good. I mean, Tyler Warren, the tight end for Penn State, is the closest I think I've seen to Gronkowski. I mean, he is 260. He's gigantic. He's got great hands. He's super fast. He's productive as hell. He makes all these big plays. He's a wildcat quarterback. I mean, they just hand it to him in short yardage. I mean, it's like he makes big catches. He's seemingly good at run after the catch. He can move people in the run game as a run blocker. So you got big Tyler Warren from Penn State. You have Ashton Gianti, who, granted, Penn State shut him down a little bit in the bowl game to the tune of about 100 yards. But the guy was going for about 12 yards a carry this year. He's probably the best running back in a great running back draft. It's a little debatable because of the quality of competition at Boise, but he's special, no doubt. And then there's T-Mac, Teteroa McMillan, who was Jacob Cowing's teammate at Arizona, who's just 6'5" and runs in the 4.3s, and he's really, really special. And a lot of people think he's going in the top 5, but receivers on draft day seem like they fall from time to time. And he's really unique. So he may not be for everybody. He's really special. So they could be staring at 11, and all 3 of these really special skill position guys are staring them right in the face, and yet they need offensive linemen, and they need defensive tackles, and they probably could trade back and get more picks. Where do you weigh in on the one thing I love about Brad Holmes is I feel like Brad Holmes doesn't draft with need. He just goes after great players. And then I just think that when you go after great players and you get a bunch of them, all of a sudden it's like you got a great team. And I'd like to see I feel like the Niners go into drafts going, we need to get a wide receiver. Okay, it's 32. It's Ricky Pearsall. It's like, stop. Go get Zach Frazier.
Perfect example,
go get Zach Frazier. Play the thing as it comes to you, and go get value where it exists. And the Steelers don't play the draft like that. They're going for best available, and it's like I don't know. To me, I think the Lions have the draft down, and that's why they're the Lions right now. And I think the Niners are a little lost in the draft, to be completely honest, and it bothers me.
Yeah. It's the whole reason why these teams have passed them. Philly's drafted well the last few years. The Rams have drafted really well from, the first round all the way to the end. What the Niners used to do, the Lions have done it with, like you said, Brad Holmes, Howie Roseman, Les Snead. They're crushing the draft, and conversely, they're passing the 49ers.
Seattle even. Tyrese
Seattle had a nice draft. I think the biggest issue is knowing, and this team as I do, having just been around them a long time, and we kind of know the philosophies. So when somebody throws a certain name out there, sometimes I laugh, because what these mock guys are doing is, what a mock draft is, even though we can't pass them up, we click on them. I do them, you do them, we look at them all the time, is that they try to match, like you said, need with player, and they don't realize what really this particular team is looking for. So this morning, Jordan Reed at ESPN did one, and I think he gave him Simmons, the tackle guard out of Ohio State. I've seen tackle guards, Daniel Jeremiah, the kid out of Missouri, was his. And I'm not saying these guys are wrong. It could happen. But if they're drafting an offensive lineman, they're going to trade down. They're not taking one at 11. And I doubt they'd take one, because, as you and I have talked about before, that's Chris Forster just doesn't believe in it. And the Niners don't believe in it. They got Pooney in the third round, which probably drilled it even more. Look, we got an all-rookie guard in the third round. Why would we take one in the first round? So I think they're going to go out and get Dahlman, and they're going to fix that. And then they need a left guard, and I think they can wait in the draft to get one. So that's what I think they'll do. If one of those defensive linemen slip to them, I think, again, to think about value. I like Tyler Warren, but I also like Loveland, the kid out of Michigan. I like the kid out of Bowling Green. I like the kid out of LSU. Like, there's so many good. I like Evans, the kid out of Notre Dame.
Tight end's good.
You also got to look at, as you well know, I'm preaching to the choir here, but where I'm just kind of doing this to let people know, it's not only who you draft, it's the value in which you get them. So while Warren is absolutely great, and they need to replace Kittle at some point, but I think Kittle proved that through a bad season, the kind of guy that he is. So I think he's going to get an extension, but they need a number 2 tight end, but not a number 11. I just don't think the value is there, especially given how many good tight ends there are in this league, in this draft. I would think if their guy was at 11, that they'll move back. And I'll even do this, Krug, if they keep that pick. If someone slips, and doesn't it always seem that somebody slips out of the top 10? Brock Bowers last year for the Raiders. Like, how is he slipping? Jalen Carter the year before that. There's always somebody who slips, and you're in that range. And if there was somebody, let's say 9, that they absolutely loved, Mason Graham, who shouldn't be there at 9, but just for the sake of conversation, he's supposed to go in the top 5, and Mason Graham goes 9, this is not going to happen.
In the mock draft I'm looking at, he is going 9. Like, yeah, I'm looking at one right now.
That's what I mean. Is
Cam Ward. The top, the 10 in front of them go Ward 1, Travis Hunter 2, Shedeur Sanders 3, Kelvin Banks 4, Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan who didn't play this year, 5, Tenaroa McMillan 6 to the Raiders, Will Campbell, gigantic tackle, 7 to the Jets, Abdul Carter 8 to Carolina.
If the Niners are sitting at 11 and Abdul Carter
falls to
slid,
8,
I'm going to get him. Like, that's what I'm saying, is that the same thing happened with Parsons.
But in this mock, it actually Mason Graham falls to 11.
Okay, there you go.
So maybe
that's
what
I'm saying. That the Niners are in a really interesting position in that if they don't sit back, like, they could move down if there's 3 or 4 guys on their board that they like, because I think in what they're looking at, there might be, or they might do that interior line guy, offensive line, but they're going to move down to get it. But if that scenario you just mentioned, Abdul Carter, who's the most talented guy in the draft, I think, and is as close as we might get to Micah Parsons, I mean, he's a big, badass edge guy. He could be a Myles Garrett type of player. He's not as big, but he could have that kind of impact. If he's sitting there and New Orleans is on the clock at 9, I'm calling New Orleans. I'm absolutely calling New Orleans, going, I'll give you 11. I'll give you, whatever. I want 9. I want Abdul Carter. If Carter slips, if Mason Graham slips, maybe not Johnson, although I like him. Who's another one? There was another one in there. because like you said, and the strangest thing, and you mentioned it earlier, I can't believe that. I think through the process, because next week we're going to, next month, or it's February. So the end of this month, we're going to be talking about the combine. And that's where the biggest movement happens, is the Underwear Olympics. Like, I'm seeing Walter Nolan in like the late 20s. There's no way. Like, he's not going to fall that far. And I could see the Niners, if there was, say, a couple offensive linemen, a defensive lineman like Nolan, and they're sitting there at 11 going, there's like 4 guys we like. Let's move to the middle of the first round and just see what's there. And if Nolan is there, then that combines value with the player. And now you're getting Walter Nolan at 17 and you picked up a 3 or a 4 where they really do a lot of damage. So that, to me, that's what it is. Either you move up because so for some dumb reason, Abdul Carter's slipping. And remember, that's Micah Parsons who slipped to that range. It's Bowers who slipped to that range. Guys all the time slip, where you're going, why is that guy sliding? And you can't figure it out. Jalen Carter went 10. I mean, it's like Jalen Carter, like everybody in that first round should be slapped. Like, what do you, Jalen Carter went 10. He's the best young defensive tackle in the league. He dominated the NFC Championship game. He was in the backfield all day against Washington, and he went 10th. So if you feel like there's somebody in that range that like I said, a Carter, a Graham, even you're the Niners, you got to go get those guys. You got to get one of those guys.